Okay, guys, welcome back to episode 2 of 2021 Uncut. You're nervous.
I am.
You're a little bit nervous?
I'm a little nervous.
Val?
I feel fine.
You feel fine?
Yeah.
Okay. Wow. I'm excited today. I'm joined by two amazing people, very kind people. Is that accurate, do you think?
Yeah.
It is accurate. They're both too humble. It's fun for me because this is my wife right here, Lexi Manis, and I've been looking forward to doing this one together. We haven't really recorded or done anything together since I've been trying to figure out what on earth I'm doing before I invite Lexi up to try to figure out what we're doing together. But I was thinking a lot. I think the reason why this podcast is going to be so fun is because, we've talked about this a lot. We look at our world and we see division and we see, cancel culture. Someone makes one mistake or disagrees with us in that one category where we just don't think it's acceptable for them to have a different opinion. And so we cancel them and then we tell our friends to cancel them. And it's just so it's such a toxic way to live. And it's just, there's no forgiveness there. There's no grace in that kind of living. And so I was thinking, well, how do we talk about solutions? How do we talk about, instead of thinking about the problems, let's think about the solutions to those problems. And that's funny as I'm saying that because I realize that's going to come up later. Me always wanting to find solutions for everything. But I think we need more kind people, right? We need more kind people in the world today. But the word kind is what does that really mean? And so I was like, we need more empathetic people. And when I say this is me thinking in my head. And it was probably midnight and I was just woke up out of my sleep. I was like, we needed to do a podcast on empathy. And it's funny because you guys are both Enneagram 2s, which must be a very interesting reality, being a 2. And so why don't you guys tell me, as I try to empathize and understand you guys about what would it be like to be a 2, what is life like as an Enneagram 2? Either of you can go.
You go. That's a prime example. No, you go.
Yeah, that is a very prime example of I am very much I'm going to accommodate anybody else because an Enneagram 2 is the helper. And then every area of my life, I want to help anybody, whether it's in ministry, whether it's at work, in my personal life. I sent you guys that meme today where it was when you meet a new friend and the photo says I will die for you. And that's how I feel about so many different people in my life and different areas. It's just I would die for people. I will do things wholeheartedly and sometimes it can get exhausting, but it's definitely a 2 thing.
Yeah. I would say the exact same thing. A lot of my friends, they joke around oh, you need something? Don't worry, Lexi's got it. Lexi will be like, oh, you need that thing over there? I'll go get it for you.
Yeah.
The other day, someone said, oh, I could really use a scrunchie. And I read her lips across the room and went and got a scrunchie and gave it to her. And so it's just always being there for people like your friends, your family, and always just going the extra mile to kind of make sure that they're taken care of and that they know they're loved.
Lexi's the only reason that anyone in my life ever gets a birthday card, or a wedding present card. I'm the guy that I'll get the cash and put it in the card. Well, actually, will I? No, you're actually that person too. She's the cash person and the card person. I'm just the, if she puts it right in my face, I'll sign the card person.
This year, Lexi dropped me off cookies and a card for my birthday, and she signed it with both of your guys' names. And I was like, I know.
In the same writing.
Yeah, and I was like, I know that this is purely for Lexi.
Yeah. Well, you were right. So I think it's important to talk a little bit about these words. So pity, sympathy, empathy, and compassion. And I think, well, for me, a few days ago, and I think for most people listening, these words are probably almost synonymous in our minds. We're they just mean kind of the same thing, right? Because I think we just kind of use them, out of context, and it was cool to actually research it and learn a little bit about what the difference is. And so I think the best way to put this is, talking about, so there's a hole in the forest. I'm walking down the forest path, I guess you can say, the path in the forest. I'm 100 meters away. I see someone fall into the hole. And a response of pity would be from 100 meters away, I go, ooh, that looked like it hurt. But I actually don't go out of my way at all. I don't stray from my path at all, and I continue on my way. Sympathy, the next step, I guess, in the progression would be I actually walk over to the hole. So I divert from my day and from my plans a little bit. I walk over to the hole and I peek my head down and I say, man, that must have hurt. Did that hurt? And we engage in a conversation, but I don't actually go out of my way to help them or understand them or get into the hole. And that's kind of the next step, would be empathy. So empathy is, I actually climb down or jump down into the hole with that person, and I spend time out of my day with no agenda, just trying to understand how they feel, trying to actively listen to them and read their kind of their physical, what do you call those? Their body language, and to look at the cues, nonverbal cues,
cues.
and try to actually like understand how that person's feeling. I have a pretty good idea that person would be in pain because they just fell into a hole, but this is obviously a symbolism, a symbol. But the last one would be, and this is one where I can tend to skip over from sympathy. I skip over empathy at times. And the last one is compassion. And that's where I try to figure out a way for us to get out of that hole. And I want to get out of that hole together. So compassion is amazing. But what we're going to talk about today is how, in order to get to even talking about a solution, or oftentimes to get someone to a point where they're ready to climb out of the hole, figuratively. I think we've all felt at times where, in our lives, I think everyone can relate to feeling like we're in a black hole. And so I think, I sometimes want to jump straight to the solutions. Let's talk about how, you're in this hole. You want to be out of that hole. I have 10 ideas. Let's try them. But let's talk a little bit about what you guys think, because empathy is really essential in that process. So what is empathy to you, and why do you think it is important? As someone who is, and let me say, as two people who are experts in empathy.
Well, I wouldn't necessarily say I'm an expert. I feel like a lot of the time, I need to express a little bit more empathy. I find myself falling short. It's something that you definitely can work on. And it's something that's definitely developed. It's not something that comes easy to think about other people's thoughts and feelings. And that's what it is. It's recognizing other people's thoughts, feelings, and sharing them with them. And it even goes a step further and wanting to help. And so what that means to me is that is one of the frameworks of how I can build my relationships with other people, is if I can respect how they're feeling and try to think about how they're feeling, then we can proceed if there's a problem or even if they're struggling. And then I can go from there and try to help them.
It's interesting though, because I don't know if you guys even a natural empathetic response. It comes almost in your nature as a two. And so even when you're like, I can get better at it, well, definitely we can all get better at anything, right? We're imperfect. But it's interesting because I think a lot of people would relate to me, and empathy is not a natural response that I have. And I want to train it, and that's why I'm sitting here listening to you guys, because I want to get better at it. I think it's really, really important. But I just want to say too, like, if you're listening right now and you're like, I can't relate to that necessarily, that being a natural response, well, I'm in the same boat, and you're not a bad person, you're just different, but we can all get better at it too.
Yeah.
Definitely. And like, even for myself, like, I think I'm the opposite as you, and I'm naturally over empathetic.
We're opposite.
Complete opposite. But sometimes it's not always the best thing, and sometimes it can be exhausting at times. But definitely, like, I think empathy is just allowing yourself to have people be vulnerable with you, and for you to be vulnerable with them, and just connecting in that way. Because once you're able to break down those walls and really talk about the things that are hard in your life and things that you're going through, that's how you can get to those solutions and how you can get to that compassion part.
Right.
And so for me, empathy is listening and letting people be vulnerable with me, and just like trying in every way that I can to feel the way that they're feeling, to then help them after.
Yeah, I gotta ask. So, because let me say again, to feel what they're feeling. I have never experienced that once in my life. Like, can you is that something that actually takes, like, you can actually feel that hurt and that?
For myself, definitely.
Am I a sociopath?
I don't think so. I think maybe there might be something wrong with me at that point. But like, we've talked a lot about how I used to work at work at a homeless shelter.
Yeah.
And there you work with a lot of vulnerable people, and you hear a lot of really hard stories. And the best way that I could help them is to listen and to let them be vulnerable, and to, in no way could I ever understand what they're going through, but to just listen there and show them that somebody is there and cares for them.
Yeah.
Right.
And like, I'm willing to like dig my soul deep enough that I can feel the way that you're feeling.
Even though you can't relate.
Yeah.
Yeah.
But to just allow myself to break down those walls in myself, to feel what they're feeling, and then like it's a game changer for relationships. Like, these are people that were complete strangers to me. And now if something's wrong, I'm able to talk them down. I'm able to help them. I'm able to convince them to do all of these changes in their lives and improve their lifestyle.
Which is the compassion step.
Yeah.
But you wouldn't have got there.
I would not have gotten there because there's so many walls that they have built up.
Right. Yeah.
So they're used to people tearing them down and
Yeah.
people looking poorly at them because they are homeless.
Right.
And so for me to be willing to sit there on a couch with them and just listen as they tell me these stories and things that they've gone through, and to let them cry and to really feel these things. And then from there, I'm able to have conversations with them about the changes that they can make, because they now trust me.
Yeah.
Because I've been able to be vulnerable with them by letting them in, and they're able to be vulnerable with me by letting me in.
I think that's amazing. And I think maybe just pausing quickly and just saying, God put you at that shelter with those people coming by for a reason. And you talked about how they had walls up because, it's so sad to think about, they had walls up for a reason because people had treated them poorly, told them all sorts of horrible things. And just a quick shout out too, Val leads up our Feeding the Homeless initiative almost every time we do for this city.
Yes, she does.
And she just crushes it too. And it's just amazing to see, like you walking in your gift set and leading that team. It's really cool. But I just wanted to encourage, everyone, and myself included, and all of us, like, I believe that God put us in proximity with the people in our lives for a reason. And that person that comes across your path that you might be tired, you might be busy, you might be doing something else, but to try to shift our mindset and think that we're actually in that place with that person for a reason. And maybe that person needs me to listen to them right now. Maybe that person just needs me to even just smile at them or ask how their day is going, or to actually try to feel how that person might be feeling. But I also think, as we were preparing and talking and kind of thinking and praying about this too, I believe that there is a happy medium between us. And that's why these conversations are amazing, because I don't just love results. I love people getting helped. That's not, it's not just me like checking the box. Like I love to see someone, and Jake's watching me right now and listening to me. Jake knows all about me wanting to see him do better. And the way that I want to see someone do better is I'm like, here's an action step. I'm checking with you Monday. But I feel like I don't think I would ever be able to say that to someone like Jake. And maybe this is me realizing I have actually tried to be empathetic, but if I didn't take time to get to know him, you know what I mean? And so, but I also think, and I think it's been true for both of you at times, and I think there's people that can relate. There's times when you guys have poured yourselves out for other people, to help other people. Jake, same thing. To be there for other people. And while doing that, you've forgotten to take care of yourself. And I guess that'd be one of the dangers, I guess. So do you guys want to just speak to that a little bit?
Definitely. I think there was a point about a year ago, and like we had conversations about it, about how I was really burnt out. I was working full time at the shelter, putting my whole heart into our youth ministry, and I'm a small group leader, all of my personal life things, and I definitely was getting burnt out. And I needed to make a change because the way that I described it a lot is it was just a two thing. That like I just do all of these things, and we had talked about the other day about how I'm just constantly filling other people's cups and not filling my own. And so I had to make a change in my life a year ago. And so that's when I quit my job. I started a new job because it was less stressful and less, and not even stressful, but like taking on so much, where I didn't leave work feeling heavy,
Right.
because I'd been taking on so many different things by having those conversations, by making those connections. And like, as much as like I impacted their lives, they also impacted my lives. And I am a completely different person because of it. And it was a season that I was there, and the season was over, and so I had to step away.
And I know for you too, there's been like, I guess maybe times when, I guess like we all have an unhealthy version of ourselves. So an unhealthy 8. There's been, I've been an unhealthy 8 before. You've been an unhealthy 2. You've been an unhealthy 2. But how have you seen that play out for you at times when you haven't been as healthy? Like, how does your 2-ness or your empathy, like how does it come out in ways that can be harmful for you?
In ways that it can be harmful for me, I notice that I go overboard in people pleasing. And if someone needs a need met, like I said before, oh, you need something, I'll get it for you. A lot of the time, there's some people who just want to do it on their own and they don't actually want help. Like they're just struggling, but they're happy to struggle through it and make progress through it. And whereas there's been times where I'm like, oh, I want to help you. And I've just inserted myself into that situation and tried to help. But when really all that they wanted was connection and just recognizing their feelings and their stresses about whatever situation they're in. But I go a little overboard and try to insert myself into their problem and fix it. And when really they didn't want that. And a lot of the time, with empathy too, is if you see people in your family or your friends and even strangers or at your work or anything, and you see them struggling and you honestly take on their emotion and you feel for them. And it comes to a point where if you're doing that a lot for a lot of different people like you, Val, where it starts to almost weigh down your heart and your soul.
Take on,
and it becomes overwhelming. And that's when you need to, like you said, take a step back and really just focus
reassess
on some even, I know a simple thing for me is I love to clean and organize.
Which works great for me.
I will go through my closet and I'll declutter and I'll organize my things. And
you should go through and get rid of some clothes then. That'd be great.
No.
I have like a little square foot over in the corner for my clothes, and she has the rest of the walk-in closet.
I'm not going to give my opinion in this, but Lexi, I have your back.
Thank you. But yeah, so even just doing something little that helps you get organized and back in touch with yourself, I know that that's a huge step in coming out of overwhelming yourself with empathy.
Definitely.
And I was, as we were kind of talking and just prepping for this too, something that was very interesting to me was like, what is helpful empathy? Because I think sometimes we'll climb down into the hole, and maybe we don't have the best intentions even in going down there. Maybe we're bored. Maybe we have nothing else to do. Maybe we actually like have a feeling that hurt that was that caused that person to be in it, that was someone we don't like, and now we're excited we can pile on that person. And we talked a little bit about how like empathy isn't just trying to understand the person who's in the hole, but trying to understand the situation as a whole, trying to be able to look at it and understand not only the person that's in the hole, but maybe the person that hurt them to get them in the hole. Not so that we can be like, oh, that was great that they did that to you, but maybe so we can actually offer helpful advice and understand everyone involved. And then that would be a way where we can actually help them find healing and forgiveness. But why don't you talk a little bit about that too, and then I'll get into kind of how I think that relates to cancel culture a little bit.
Something I often do when I'm having conversations with mostly people in like my personal life when they're struggling with other people is I break down in my mind the situation. And I think, okay, my friend is feeling this way because this person did this thing. And so say Jim was mean to Sally, very generic names, and Sally is coming to me upset about it. And I'm like, okay, well, I can see that my friend is very upset. And rather than being like, you know what, yeah, I don't like Jim anymore because, you know what, Jim did this mean thing to Sally and I don't like that. Instead, I think, okay, why did Jim do that? Why did Jim say that? And he could be in the wrong, he could
For
not
sure.
be.
Yeah.
But there's always a reason
Right.
why somebody hurt somebody. It's
Right.
something that we say often at Southside, is hurt people hurt people. And so that's something that I drill into my mind, is hurt people hurt people. And if somebody's
True, yeah.
hurting somebody else, there's a reason behind it. And why is that reason?
Yeah.
Right.
And that's the part of having empathy, not only for the person you're speaking to, but for the person that you're having a conversation with. Because if I were to just take Sally's side and everything, Jim would never have a way to grow.
Right,
Because
right.
he would just constantly be being put down and losing people in his life, where I could speak truth into his life
Right.
and help change the way that he's going about things.
Yeah.
If I were to have empathy for both of them rather than one of them.
And that's interesting because, and I'm not trying to pile on at all or cast judgment on people on, social media, because we're on social media too. And I know firsthand how addicting that can be. And I promised I was going to tie it into cancel culture. So let me get to it. You guys think I'm crazy, but so Val's talking to Sally, okay? Because Jim was mean to Sally. Jim hurt Sally, and I know these names make it sound kind of corny, but it could be like these are real. These could be real scenarios where Jim did something really terrible, right? Or he made a big mistake, And so maybe in that scenario, Val remembers a few weeks ago when Jim said that thing to her, did that thing to her, and in that moment, you kind of have a choice. You can pile on Jim, and you can be happy that now there's more ammunition to destroy Jim. And that happens a lot on social media. So someone will make a post or make a comment or say something that they never would have said in person, but they had courage to do it because social media can bring that out of us in a weird way. I have one story about me doing that, and I'm not going to tell it right now, but it's interesting though, because in that moment, you kind of had a choice. You can try to help Sally find an ability to forgive Jim, and more than that, though, to climb herself out of that spot in a healthy way. But also, we want to offer Jim in safe situations where Jim isn't an axe murderer or someone actually dangerous, because that happens too. We want to offer Jim, if we really do care about everyone, finding healing and making good decisions and experiencing the grace and the hope and the freedom and the truth that's in Jesus, then we want Jim to have an opportunity to make that right and to grow from it. But if we cancel Jim,
And then everyone piles on him.
everyone piles on. And now how do you think Jim feels?
Yeah.
And why do you think Jim did? And that goes back to, why do you think Jim did that? But if I had empathy and he's hurt. And why is he hurt? Well, he probably has some really broken people in his life that have broken him.
That even goes back to like the first time I can think of me having empathy is I came home from school, elementary school, and I was crying because kids were making fun of me. And I was telling my mom about it. And one of the first things she said to me, she's like, well, I feel bad for that little boy. And I said, well, why do you feel bad for him? Feel bad for me. I was the one who got bullied. And she said, well, I feel bad for him because he obviously doesn't feel good enough about himself to try to make other people feel less than, or he's learning it from somewhere. That's either an older brother, sister, parents, they're learning that behavior from somebody else to treat other people like that. So then that kind of gave me the perspective of there's other things going on in other people's lives when they're attacking you or they're trying to make you feel less than.
Right. Because we want to always take this podcast back to a position of practical steps. How can we actually, myself included, you guys are probably going to be good, but myself included, how can maybe you guys are going to be good by showing empathy in restraint and caring about yourselves too. And I say that kind of as, it's not a joke at all, because it's really important that you take care of yourselves. And so I think that's great. And for me, it's going to be really important for me to work on empathy, for my first response not to be solution based, but for my first response to try to understand them. And so let's make it practical so we can kind of take some some homework home and carry it out. Because like I said, every person listening to this, they're in different situations at school, at work, wherever, and they're interacting with different people who need to be shown empathy. They need to be shown the grace and the truth and the love of God through you listening to them. I think sometimes we as Christians can think, I need to just evangelize to them. I'm going to slap them over the head with the Bible, because that always works, right? We see it never works. And I think what we need to do more is to listen and to understand their perspective and to break their stereotypes as, Christians just want to, they just want to preach to me and judge me. No, I want to listen to you. So why don't we all go around and give just a practical kind of, how do I become more empathetic? How do you become more empathetic?
Me?
Yeah, go for it.
Okay. Well, one of the things I do is regarding like what you said about listening is I actually look at the person when I'm talking to them. I know some people probably think I'm a little crazy, and like I can see in their eyes.
Because you're staring at them?
I'm staring at them and they're trying to think like, what is she thinking right now? And I'm literally just trying to listen. And so that's not being distracted. That's putting your phone down. If you want to actually know how someone's day is, look at them and figure out how their day was. Like a lot of things is their eye contact, their nonverbal cues, just seeing how they actually are and actually listening to them. And it goes a long way, even not being distracted. Like it might be or a hard conversation. It might be hard within the first couple minutes, but having empathy in those moments, it actually goes such a long way in the long run.
Val?
I think too, asking the harder questions rather than you send a message to your friend and you're like, "Hey, how's it going?" And they reply back, "Good. How about you?" Good.
Yeah.
Well,
Good.
that doesn't get you anywhere.
Right.
And so sometimes, like with some of my friends, I'll send them messages and I'll be like, like, how's your heart today?
Yeah.
And like, what is there anything that like I can help you with? What can I do? Like, do you need to talk about anything? I'm here for you. I want you to know that. And leaving it open for people to be able to have that conversation with you, because so often we have those surface level conversations.
Right, because they're easy.
Yeah, and they're so easy. I could have a surface level conversation with you all the time.
We do have
Yeah,
some.
yeah. But
I'm going to
then,
start asking you how your heart is.
all right. But then also you don't get anywhere. And I
Right.
think about the real friendships and the connections that I have come from talking about the hard things and really like diving deeper in those things. That's why like I often think about moments that were like game changers in friendships, where this person went from being like my friend to like, this is my best friend who I want to have in my life forever.
Right. Yeah.
And those moments were in the hard moments where they let me be vulnerable with them and they were vulnerable with me. And so I think really just having those harder conversations and being open and letting people know that you're open to listen.
Yeah.
Right, and I would say, like, I always get faced with that because I have a lot of friends that don't live here, and so all of our communication is over text or Instagram or whatever.
Hey, how's it going?
You're always faced with, do I just keep it surface or do I put in effort? And it always comes down to effort. Do I give up time right now to actually like engage in their lives by asking a tougher or a actual leading question instead of something that will kind of end the conversation.
Yeah.
And then I would just say, as a non-expert in empathy, but you mentioned it kind of briefly, Lexi, in your answer, but just, we can't read the people around us. We can't, you were talking about how you love people watching, which is funny, but I never people watch ever, which is why I find that so funny.
My favorite pastime.
That's not creepy. Val she goes down to the public library and people watches.
Yeah,
Sits in the cubicle.
You learn a lot about people just by like their mannerisms.
Hey, well that is my point though. It's like if and again, I'm not trying to be the old guy that's hammered on phones, because I spent 6 hours on my phone yesterday. That's how much I spent on my.
You spent 6 hours?
A lot of it was like working or doing different things, but I
Oh.
spent a lot of time looking down at my phone yesterday. I'll be open about it.
What's your usual daily average?
It's like between 4 and 5.
Val, what's yours?
And
I don't want to talk about it. I spend a lot of time on TikTok.
Do you,
okay, at least I don't have TikTok.
I put a time
I'm
limit
on like
on it.
I'm
I
on
used
WhatsApp.
to, and then I was like, I deserve more time on TikTok.
my
I
word.
deserve more.
Yeah.
Instead
Everybody
of
pray for
snoozing
Val.
it.
Let's pray for Val and Lexi that they'll get off
Yeah.
TikTok. But my point, when we're looking down at our phone all day on our social media accounts, looking for our likes, looking for our retweets, looking for our affirmation, looking for other people that we can maybe pile on and cancel. And that might sound a little negative, but a lot of us spend some time doing that. We'll never have we might miss, or we will miss, all these opportunities in front of us. People are walking by, that friend that has that cue when he sees that. whatever the case may be, you're not going to notice it if your head is buried in your phone.
Yeah.
And that's easier said than done. And I'm on the same journey right now with you. And like a few times, you know, hanging out with our family, like I'll leave my phone at the door now. I'm just trying different things because I want, and I make the joke because my family makes fun of me more than anyone else, which is how it should be. But I'll just be like, come on guys, let's be present. Like kind of as a joke, because I know how annoying that is to say, but it's true. Like,
and honestly, when he says it to me, I'm like, oh, okay, yeah. And then I put my phone down because I in that moment, I realized that I've just been staring and scrolling and not paying attention to a word he said.
Yeah. And I think it takes a lot to say to somebody, like, can you be present?
right.
Because like you can then visually see that like this person's been on their phone for a while. You can clearly tell
Right.
this person's annoyed, and so they're going to say like can you be present in our conversation? Because the one thing I hate is talking to somebody and then I see them look down
While
and they're
you're
looking at
speaking
their
to them,
phone, and I'm like,
there's no better way to say I don't really care what you're saying.
Yeah.
But the thing is, and this is why I do love young people. I don't think that they are thinking that. I don't think they're saying I don't care what you say. But dude, phones are addicting. And I said dudes, whatever. phones are yeah, ladies might be better. Phones are extremely addicting.
yeah,
Like there's a lot of people, really great people that aren't saying, Lexi, I don't care what you're saying, but like they're checking up on that drama, or they're looking at like whatever the like those algorithms are powerful, you know? And so I would
TikTok.
TikTok.
Man.
yeah, everyone, like I said, prayers. Okay? But
Thank you.
I think we need to wrap it up. Otherwise it's gonna disintegrate into TikTok conversation.
Let me tell you
here.
about that TikTok trend,
No,
Lexi.
no, no.
Let me see.
But honestly, this was fun, and this was different than, you know, something I would usually talk about, and it was fun even researching it. And so I would just say, just be willing to, for everyone, just be willing, ourselves included, to climb into that pit and to spend time listening, spend time understanding. And then for someone like me, that's encouraging because I know that will lead to me being able to speak and act in compassion and help them get out of that hole. Because, you know, I think sometimes Christians too, maybe this is the last thought, we think and believe, and I actually believe this, that Jesus is the answer to all of our questions. But no one wants to hear that. Like a non-Christian, oftentimes a Christian, like when we've lost people, like, you know, we've gone through hard things in our lives, like that's probably not the time to say, Jesus is the answer. It's like, but the thing is, he was, and we experienced healing, but we needed people to sit in it with us.
Yeah.
And so, yeah, I don't know. This was cool. I feel like I took something away. I hope everyone else did. And I would just encourage everyone listening to, all you students out there, just really, I think it was Vigeli that said something the other day. Vigeli is one of our awesome Southside youth leaders. He said, if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, go together. And we're in this thing for the long haul. And so I would just encourage everyone to get into a small group if you're not in one. You can text group to 604-670-3040. There's some student groups on there. Pick a group. These two are leading different groups. And
My group's really cool.
of course it is. And so is Lexi's. I lead a group as well. And we would just love to be able to do life with you. So you might be in New Brunswick or Halifax, wherever you are. We meet on Zoom right now. It's perfect. And then when we're in person, we'll set you up on a chair on a Zoom call so you can
Little
keep hanging
iPad.
out. Yeah. But no, that's it. We love you guys, and we're pumped for small group week next week. And then episode 3, I actually have the name already. I'm not going to spoil it, but we'll see you guys back in 2 weeks.